think that's as good a point as any there, right at the end of that song, to hit that button. We will therefore hit the other big button. Hey-oh. Well. News right at the top of the hour. It's been a day for it. Wednesday seems to be the right day to do this show, doesn't it, ladies and gents? Great to see folk. Do keep answering the warm-up question in chat, of course. GB has... GB to win the GB to make the Olympics. No, I prefer GB to win the Olympics. Slight cheat there on the question, Andrew. That's not what the question says, but fair play to you for throwing that out there. Well done, you. Make sure that subscribe, share it out, share the stream out so we can get as many people in as possible. There is a lot of news to power through today. Yeah. Andy, what would we do without you? Well, GB won one Olympics. I'm not sure what our World Championship positioning technically is. I suppose technically we should go and win a World Championship first, but that is what it is on that one. We'll just, as people are starting to slowly filter their way in, we'll just make sure bits and pieces are out. Folk are getting into the stream, which is what we're after, which is good. Things are working. I think we're able to do things ever so slightly differently, and this is mostly just due to one of the changes we made last week. So we're going to see if this works. We're going to see if it works, and we'll try it out as we just let people get in. I'm going to take a quick swig of water. Going live. We don't do Pepsi Max here. It's strictly water when we're rocking and rolling, but it is what it is on that front. Either way, it looks like it's that time of day again, folks. So I suppose he says cracking his neck over so slightly. I suppose we better get down to it. Guys, gals, and the gender fluid, it is Wednesday, and all beyond the binary, it is Wednesday night, it is 8 PM, and welcome back once again to the BOTW What's Current stream. My name is Anthony Russell, here to take you through the wild, weird, and wonderful world that is the National Ice Hockey League structure here in Great Britain. We focus on the National Division. That is our bread and butter, our home port, as it were. But of course, we take a moment over the next hour and a bit to go through absolutely everything and anything from across the NIHL. That means the National Division, as well as Division 1 and Division 2 in the north and in the south. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Great to have you back with us for the duration. A lot has happened, and before we kick on with the news, we will quickly, very, very quickly, do all the housekeeping bits and pieces so that we can crack on with the absolute wheelbarrows worth of news that we've had just out of today, which is pretty crazy. But of course, bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things related to the NIHL. Of course, with the website started nearly 13 years ago when I wrote about the Bison, where the Bison have wandered off into the mists for the time being. You can follow me on my journey across the NIHL this year with our Banners on the Road series. If I go to a game, you get the nice long form, in-depth write-up on the experience, the game itself, and then a bit of a breakdown as to kind of what happened for both sides. And last Saturday, I got one of my favourite encounters of the year. Solent versus Streatham never ceases to amaze me just how much fun this game is. Never disappoints. I've obviously had a fair few bits of dealing with Solent over the course of this season. I've been to a few games in Gosport this year, but irrespective of that, I'd have found a way to get myself to Gosport for this game. These two sides butting heads is always a sight to behold, whether at Forest Way or on the High Road in South London. Trust me on that one. But you can read the write-up of that on bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Of course, you can read back through bits and pieces like our Hockey Stories series, long-form pieces of content in written and audio-visual form from the 19th century to the present day, from behind the Iron Curtain, into war and beyond. Players, coaches, officials, the movers and shakers of hockey from around the world. If you're going back and looking at one, because I know they've recently been advertising that new referees course, that level 1 course is happening in Telford before too long. Check back through the BOTW archives for Ego, Id and Super Ego, which is a piece that I wrote where I interviewed Andrew Jarvie, British ice hockey refereed a fair bit in the Elite League this year. He's also refereed in the National Division, about his journey from playing with the rec team with the oldest players in the country to now being a top level official here in Britain. But there is a bunch of stuff that you can go check out over on the website bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. And of course, it is Wednesday. It is 8 PM. That means we are here live on YouTube again, as we are pretty much every Wednesday throughout the British ice hockey season. And of course, that means all the great bits. Down there in the description, links to all the socials, as well as our virtual busking hat over at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. And of course, I'm going to give you all of the usual YouTube spiel. If you haven't already, do subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell, because that'll tell you as soon as the stream goes live, so you don't miss what we're doing. Make sure that you like the video, share it out to your friends in bits and pieces, and the more people that we have coming in and joining the party, the better. That's always great, because this isn't a monologue. This is a dialogue. Obviously, it's me running through all the ice hockey news, but you get to join in, because that is the joy of the chat function on YouTube. It's over there on the side. Make sure that you go and check it out. But of course, if you do want to contribute, please feel free. Comments, questions, thoughts and feelings, anything you want to throw in as we work our way through all of this stuff that we're talking about. But please do remember the golden rule here at BOTW. That is DBAD. Don't be a dick. Be respectful of other people's thoughts and feelings, more so than Rishi Sunak managed today. Clown. Either way, news from the top of the hour, and that is that we finally have some resolution to the situation in the South 2 Cup. Obviously, admittedly, for some, not the biggest of news, but I'm going to go on a bit of a rant in a second, because we've had news from the Basingstoke Buffalo. Unfortunately, we have to announce that following the cancellation of the second leg of the semi-final, England Ice Hockey have decided that, quote, after due diligence, that's their quote marks, the game has been awarded as a 0-0 tie, meaning the Phantoms will qualify for the final on an aggregate score of 4-2. Of course, we are hugely disappointed to be eliminated from the competition through no fault of our own. For those of you unfamiliar, the second leg in Basingstoke cancelled because of a plumbing issue and electrics issue in the rink. And without the chance to play a full tie after putting ourselves in a good position the night before in Peterborough. We wish both the Peterborough Phantoms NIHL 2 and the Guildford Phoenix NIHL the best of luck for the final. For us, attention turns to finishing as high as possible in the league table and then the playoffs. Thank you for your support so far this season. It has not been easy for many involved with Basingstoke hockey this season, and we wish we had the chance to play the home leg of the semi-final. Now, for me, this is nonsense. Because, and we'll go through it properly in a bit, Basingstoke played Peterborough on Sunday in Basingstoke in the league. Now, why, given the fact that the majority of the cup games have been doubled up anyway, would you not, given the extenuating circumstances, double up the semi-final? And people will say to me, Anthony, you have far too much of a connection to Basingstoke to be neutral in this perspective. And you are entitled to that opinion. I know a fair few people who are playing on the Buffalo this year. I am friends with some of them, and I get that. But again, especially after the issue that we had with the Guildford Phoenix and the Haringey Huskies semi-final being from 2 legs to a 1-leg shootout, we've now had this where it was agreed it was going to be 2 legs. The teams prepared for 2 legs. 1 leg was cancelled because of an issue with the facility, and I know, make your own jokes about Basingstoke all you want, because trust me, I've done it too. But to then the 2 teams who couldn't play the semi-final the week before, played on the Sunday. And yes, as you will see from the result, Basingstoke won that game and Peterborough travelled very, very short-benched. There are some who will say that that weekend that was set aside for the Cup semi-finals, that should have been it. The game didn't happen, on we move. You're entitled to that opinion. It's entirely valid. And there's a fair few people from Peterborough who I'm sure feel that way. And I don't begrudge them that feeling. Given the fact that last year the South 2 title was effectively decided off of the back of administrative decisions, and that is with all due respect to Bristol. Bristol won the title last year and they were one of the best teams in the division. There isn't an argument on that. But a game was awarded to them that could have been done as a 0-0 tie, and effectively a decision was made that gave us a result. Now, I appreciate that was a difficult decision that needed to be made, because you can't have a tied league title. That isn't going to work. They couldn't stick an extra game in. Somebody had to make a tough decision. But for the second season in a row, South 2 finds one of its trophies decided, or at least a final in this case, decided off of the back of administration, not off of the back of the play on the ice. That's not good. That is very not good, very bad. Now, ultimately, the Buffalo, having beaten Peterborough on Sunday in the league, send a bit of a statement of, what happens here then, sunshine? And Peterborough fans will say, well, different set of circumstances. Peterborough went into that game and played their backup netminder as an outskater on Sunday because they've travelled so short. Guys were away. They prepared for the weekend before. Everyone had kept their calendars free, and then this happened. My response to that is, your guys choose when they have the time off. Nobody chooses for a facility to break. And again, I get it. Basingstoke, irony out of your eyeballs. But again, we're seeing decisions made that are impacting outcomes. Now, don't get me wrong. Guildford versus Peterborough as a South 2 Cup final is going to be a spectacle. The Pollards, Ryan Bainborough, a bunch of great young kids come through like Luke Kinston. I've completely forgot. I really apologise. I've forgotten the name of the youngster who had his senior debut on Sunday for Peterborough. And then on the Guildford side, the Studleys, Josh Abbott, of course, who's now the record point scorer for the Phoenix. That came out the other day. 250 points in 91 games for Josh Abbott as a member of the Guildford Phoenix. Like Josh Sherrington, all of these guys. This is going to be a superb final. But there's still going to be a bit of an asterisk hanging around it. And that's a big issue, again, for this division. And South 2 has its problems. In terms of the NIHL, it has got the widest gap between the top end and the bottom end. And I don't blame Peterborough for saying that is what it is and moving on. I don't blame people in Basingstoke for being really angry. And that press release is a lot calmer than it probably would have been had that decision been made earlier, because I think members of the Buffalo have had a chance there to calm down and write something as professional as they possibly could do, because from the people I've spoken to, they are cross. They are very, very cross in Basingstoke about this, and they are entitled to that opinion, and it's entirely justified. And ultimately, I do not understand. I don't get it. I don't get why they couldn't just do it. They could have just... It's the logic... Maybe it's not. Maybe it's the quickest answer. And maybe the quickest answer and the easiest answer isn't always the right answer. That's life, right? But there's an answer staring everybody in the face that could have seen this decided on the ice. And it wasn't. And I think that's the thing that irks me the most. Because at the base of this, I love watching ice hockey. I wouldn't have bounced myself around a bunch of places this year that I had no thought I was ever going to go and watch it. And yeah, just to see bits and pieces like this, it's another own goal. GB playing a tournament this weekend, trying to qualify for the Olympics, and the Elite League has a full raft of games. The National Division has a full raft of games, and it seems that there's still seats available. British hockey loves scoring own goals. The irony, of course, being you can't score an own goal in hockey. But this is just one of those things where there was a solution. Was everybody going to be happy with it? No. Instead, they appear to have chosen the worst of the solutions. I'm not an idiot. I've spoken to folk on all sides of this equation. I agree with some bits of what people have said on both sides. I've disagreed with what people have said on both sides. But there was an answer staring us in the face here, folks, and it really could have just been much easier to do it that way. In my opinion, such is life. We move on. We will see who will be crowned the South 2 Cup champions out of Guildford and Peterborough. Can the Phantoms deny the Phoenix the chance at yet another Grand Slam? Either way, a fair few bits of other news that have come flying out in the last little while. Signings galore. We look down into the southwest at the basement of the National Division. Reece Cochrane re-signs in Bristol for the upcoming next 2 seasons. Decent result here, I think, for Bristol. It's an organisation in turmoil. Bottom of the table, just haven't managed to get going. Turnover of guys coming in and out. And for somebody to commit to the project for the next 2 years, I think is big, because that means that they have been able to sell Reece Cochrane. Of course, he's originally from up in Scotland. They've sold him on the vision of what's coming down the pipeline. Now, obviously, Richie Hargreaves is a man who likes to play his cards close to his chest, having spoken to him. And if you haven't, check that out. The interview is back there. On banners on the wall at WordPress.com, and there's an interview on this YouTube channel with Jamie Elson as well. So you can see folk in Bristol have talked for a very long time about the project. Now, this year has definitely not been a good year for the project. But either way, they've managed to get Cochrane to return for 2 years. And that is a pretty big statement for the fact that, yes, maybe Rhys Cochrane is not going to hit the upper echelons of players in his position, but getting someone to commit for 2 years is pretty decent, especially where it seems like a lot of 2-year contracts have been flying around. Bobby Chamberlain back for another 2 seasons in Hull. And you think of how pivotal he has been. And of course, when the Seahawks came flying off the sea back onto the shore in Hull, the first name pretty much on everybody's lips was Bobby Chamberlain. Is he going to come back? And of course, that first year, he'd already committed to MK and he stayed with the Lightning. But then Matty Davis got Bobby Chamberlain back home. And you think about how imperative it's been. Yes, there's been some fantastic signings, and the recent addition of Owen Sobchuk to the Seahawks roster has been really big for them as well, because they have got a top-level playmaker in this division. But Balmer, Towner, Bonner, Chamberlain, all of those Hull guys, the prodigal sons who went their separate ways, and especially a fair few who left after the Pirates disappeared, who've now all come back. And Hull, well, we know what happened to Hull last weekend. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. Back down into the southwest though, names galore from the Swindon Wildcats, doing their usual raft of chucking out as many names as they humanly possibly can just after the signing deadline. Edgars Bebris will be back, Glenn Billing will be back, and Chris Jones announced as returning as well for the Cats. That 2-year deal in particular for Glenn Billing is a massive re-signing there, because of course, big for Peterborough last season, has been very big for Swindon this year. He is Western based, it should be said, so he was doing a lot of travelling to get across. However, one of the things that this does, particularly of course because Billing is a top level guy, could be a top 6 player in any team in this division. Swindon securing his services for another 2 years is just a shot across the bow of everybody else here. I know the boys from Macca Talks Hockey talked about the fact that Swindon have not had anybody either come in or leave. I still think that's a cheat, because Reece Kelly 100% signed. But the point still stands, actually. In terms of turnover, Kelly included or not, the minimal amount of guys have gone in and out of the Link Centre, in spite as well of the ridiculous of having not played at home for 3 months. That's pretty crazy as well. You think about just how well organised and well done everything has been on that front from Swindon. And then, of course, there's the other bit of signing news that's just come out, as Milton Keynes announced their 834th forward of the season. Jokes aside, of course, we do know that there are injuries ravaging the Milton Keynes forward ranks, but certainly a bit of an interesting signing out of left field, considering some of the names that have been would be thrown around in a situation like this. Jack Hopkins, of course, former Lightning two-way player, although recently injured in a very bad incident over in Belfast. We wish him a speedy recovery. Sam Talbot slowly returning to fitness following an injury from his time in Guildford, and instead the name is announced of Nathan Ripley. The Coventry Blaze forward signed on a two-way deal with the Lightning. Coventry will have first command over the services of Ripley going forward. So basically, essentially, he's going to play for MK when Coventry aren't playing. What a massive surprise. MK have just managed to get a guy sorted out. They've said, of course, and we will take them at their word, that they sorted this all out before the signing deadline, and they get a ringer for the Cup semi-final. That should be fun. Ultimately, though, like I say, MK do have some injury issues. They still do have a pretty stacked roster, even with those injury issues, but there are some key guys missing. Gulliver, Grinnell Park. The thing that confused me a little bit about this was, and people sort of said to me, well, Ripley's been in the Elite League with the Coventry Blaze for the last little while. Third, fourth line minutes, 6 minutes of stuff a night. Perhaps he's just not in. Perhaps he just wants to get some ice time doing some other bits and pieces. That's fair enough. I think the thing I can't quite make out of this necessarily is that there's a really obvious benefit here for the MK Lightning. They need a body, or at least they believe they need a body. I'm not sure they actually do. But they have a fair few guys injured, right? And they want someone who can come in, guest effectively, come in and bolster the top 6, top 9, however you kind of want to frame it, wherever you kind of see Ripley slotting into that roster. And I'm pretty certain Jamie, one of our regular viewers, will put that in the chat momentarily. The benefit's clearly there for the Lightning. The benefit's there for Ripley as well. He's been used as a crash and bang specialist pretty much during his time in the Elite League, but it's a role that's needed, especially in that kind of North American style AA-esque hockey. A guy who can come in, play 6, 7, 8 minutes a night, go in, do the dirty work in the corners, create a bit of energy, lay in some hits, dig the puck out of the corners. That's what you need in the Elite League. The thing I can't get my head around here, where's the value in this for the Coventry Blaze? That's the thing I'm struggling a little bit with this particular signing. My hope is that they see Ripley for the long term. And what this is effectively the opportunity to allow Ripley to go somewhere and expand his skill set a little bit. When he played for the Sheffield Steel Dogs, he was never a top-line guy. Middle six for the most part, second or third line, kind of doing a similar-ish kind of role to what he did before, but had a bit more attacking output into his game. My hope is that this, from the Blaze, is just giving him the opportunity to do some different things and in some different places. What happens elsewhere from that, I don't know. My hope is that this is just a case of letting Ripley metaphorically spread his wings a little bit, giving him the opportunity to maybe get some power play time, maybe some penalty kill time. Being able to play instead of doing 6, 7, 8 minutes a night. Pretty much, if he's walking into a team like the Lightning in this situation, you'd hope he's going to get 14, 15, 16, maybe getting close towards 20 minutes a night. That's going to put a bit of a test on his cardio in a minute, because of course he'll be playing double the amount of stuff that he had been in recent weeks. But with the Blaze now eliminated from the Challenge Cup, in terms of given the fact they got slapped around by the Steelers. There's less games in the immediacy for the Blaze. The focus for Coventry is qualifying for the playoffs. And of course, the Blaze still get first dibs, meaning that the Lightning will only be able to call on the services of Ripley as and when. This is not a signing for the playoffs for the Milton Keynes Lightning. This is a signing to keep the ranks contained. Ultimately, they're going to want to be able to run want to be able to run as close to 4 lines as possible. And this allows them to do that. Like I say, the immediate benefit for Coventry is the thing I can't quite get my head around. So have you got any great ideas? What do you think of the Nathan Ripley signing? What do we think of the trio signings in Swindon? What do we think of any of the bits of news from across the evening? Make sure to chuck some bits and pieces in the chat as we go along. Always interested to see. You can see a few bits ticking their way through. Richard Robinson, of course, was involved with the Buffalo. Understatement. I assume that's about my frustrations with that bits and pieces there. Guildford 2-1 up on Glasgow in the Elite League Challenge Cup semi-final there. Ryan Tate and Stephen McParland with the goals for the Flames. Luke Lynch for the Clan. Goes on to a line with Stewart and Wallace, says Alfie. Actually, James says the same thing. Means we can play 4 forward lines tomorrow night. Carter Hamill injured since GB under 20. Harry Gulliver still in a boot. Rio Grinnell Park dislocated shoulder. And Malik Martelli in a boot as well. That's a lot of decent young guys down, obviously. So the ability to add Ripley in is obviously a boon for that. Second line, I think, given the fact if you're putting him on a line with Wallace and Liam Stewart, that's Ripley's there to create space by the sounds of that. So he gets to kind of play a role that he's quite adept at with more minutes. So I think that's not terrible. If that's where we think he's going, then that's probably going to be really interesting to see. More in the sense of can he provide and do some bits and pieces. Can he rather than just going in and just kind of crashing around and just making sure they're not scored on, can he help now generate some offense into that? And that'll probably be something that Danny Stewart we wanted to keep an eye on as well going forward. And then of course, what we got? We have of course got some games coming up. Coming up this weekend, mostly because we have got the very, very big game coming up. I'm having a complete mental moment there. It's tomorrow night, I believe, of course, for the second leg of the NIHL National Division Cup. So, of course, as we know, last weekend everything went sideways for the Leeds Knights and the Hull Seahawks. He says, actually, I'm going to press the button very quickly because we'll have a chat about. Oh, that's the wrong one. That one, Anthony. There we go. Text is a little bit small, so I do apologise a little bit on that front. But the one thing we do know is that the Leeds Knights, the dream of the Grand Slam is over for Leeds because Hull spanked them. Hull walked into Leeds last Friday evening and absolutely taught them a lesson. 5-1 the final score. The Hull Seahawks, bottom of the NIHL National Division last season, are now National Cup finalists. What a turnaround for Matty Davies and the Hull Seahawks. And you think about the amount of guys as well who came back. A few little tweaks here and there, different imports, of course, trading out Bobby Young for Owen Sobchak recently, but a lot of the guys who came beforehand, of course, a lot resting on the shoulders of Jordan McLaughlin in the net. Andy there, I think I've just about finished tweeting about Hull versus Leeds. You say that, I think you're going to be living off of that one for a little while, but of course it means tomorrow night in the Thunderdome, a 7:45pm face-off between the Milton Keynes Lightning and the Swindon Wildcats. What about him? We'll talk about him in a minute, Richard, so don't worry about that. When we get on to South 1, we'll have a chat about that one. But so MK versus Swindon tomorrow night. Swindon, of course, leading 3-2 from the first leg in Swindon. That late Chris Jones goal in the last minute. The shot that he didn't mean to take, but still took. Finding its way through Will Curlin. Going to be a very, very different looking MK heading into tomorrow. What's Swindon going to do? Exactly what we expect them to do. It's Swindon. One thing Swindon can never be accused of. It's not pulling. They don't pull many surprises out of their giant hat. But what I'm really interested to see is what MK do. So, like I say, throwing Nathan Ripley into the mix. I can see there in the chat that Jamie's mentioned they don't want to split up a third line of Max Stewart, Corey McEwen and Tom's Rutkiss, which has been going so well recently. That's fair, and I mean that's fair enough. So you're not going to bring Ripley in from an elite league side to stick him on a fourth line. So that second line is probably is the place that's going to make the most sense on that front. But yeah, so certainly in terms of tomorrow evening, one goal is not enough for Swindon. The one thing Swindon need to do for me is score early and then frustrate MK. Now, it's not a very Swindon-esque style to kind of do that. And it's a really, really tough spot to be in, to go to MK with only a 1-goal lead. The one thing MK, for all of the jokes we make about the fact that MK don't have the resiliency of Leeds, it's still a team full of very, very talented players, and they do score goals. They can score quite a lot of goals very quickly. Swindon need to be prepared for the fact that in front of what is probably going to be a very, very busy Thunderdome, they're going to have MK run at them hard and fast. If Swindon can get an early goal, if they can nick an early goal, then I think it makes MK drastically change their plans. If they can't score early, Swindon are just going to have to deal with that wave of pressure. And then the longer the game goes on and the longer it takes MK to score, the more this tie plays back into the hands of the Swindon Wildcats. MK need to go out and smash everything in a Wildcats jersey from the second one to the last second of the game. The best way MK can win this tie is the traditional MK way of the last couple of years. Shock and awe. That's the best course of action, in my opinion, for MK. Get everybody running on as much as they possibly can, as they can do. Shots on net. Push Swindon back into their zone. Push them back on their heels, because eventually, like with all teams in this division, apart from Hull apparently, the dam will break. Sheer volume and sheer quantity and quality of shots is what's going to win this for MK. Rennie Marr has had a much better season this year than he had the season previous. 22-23 was definitely not Rennie's best year by any stretch of the imagination. But he's been much better this year. but keepers can only do so much, and that's definitely a thing I've seen in quite a few places this season. Whether it's been in Solway or Solent, literally at both ends of the country, I've seen keepers asked to perform miracles in those rings, and it doesn't work because the guys in front of you have to do the business. I think of Oxford at home against the MK Thunder a couple of weeks ago. Having a good keeper is all well and good. If your defence have gone wandering off into the ether, doesn't make a damn bit of difference. So that's the thing for me here. Swindon need it close. MK need to blow it open. If depending on that is who we will see take on Hull in the final of the National Division Cup. Either way, we will very quickly then just have a quick swizz and we'll just look at we'll just have a look at the bits and pieces, the results from last weekend in the National Division. So as we see there, Leeds beaten by Hull 5-1 at home, which then of course takes us into Saturday and an important win in the playoff race for the Bees. Their home and home weekend that they had with the Sheffield Steel Dogs, needing points and getting points at home. A 5-3 win for Dom Gabai's side against the Steel Dogs on Saturday evening. Bristol, well, they're still propping up the table on a 4-2 defeat at home against Telford. Kept it close. And it's a better performance on the whole from the Pitbulls, but they still come away with no points out of Saturday. We wonder what the response would be from the Knights. It wasn't the complete overwhelming piece that maybe some might have expected against the Raiders, but the Knights back to winning ways in the league. A 4-1 win for them at the Castle, as MK also do the business in an attempt to try and keep anywhere close to Leeds. An 8-2 win over Solway in MK on Saturday night. And then Swindon with the 4-2 victory at home against Peterborough. Another double home weekend for Swindon as they try and stuff in half a year's worth of fixtures into 5 minutes. Not great for the Phantoms, of course, who got leapfrogged by Swindon a little while ago, and the Wildcats are slowly pulling themselves up into that conversation, potentially of getting second. I don't think the Cats are going to catch Leeds now. In terms of Sunday's results then, Hull, a decent weekend for them. Their first cup final as the Seahawks in a 6-2 win over the Pitbulls. A nice easy cruise to victory for Matty Davis' side. MK, well, the local derby proved to be a bit testy and a bit tasty. And ultimately, though, it's a seesaw battle that the Lightning pull out in regulation. A 0-point weekend for the Phantoms, a 4-point weekend for MK, which they desperately needed to have any chance of staying in the title race. 5-4 for Tim Wallace's side. Another big seesaw battle in Swindon as well. The Raiders managed to get something out of Swindon. It's a 6-5 win in overtime for the Cats, but Raiders running them close, coming back on a few occasions to get the game into the extra frame. The Steel Dogs, well, they lose again. They do get a point, but it's a 4-point weekend for the Bees. Massive for them in that playoff race, especially when you consider Solway only take 1 point from the weekend. They do take the game into... they were actually ahead against Telford, but Telford get the shootout victory. So Solway only picking up 1 point this weekend compared to the 4 picked up by the Bees. So then what we'll do, of course, and the big thanks, of course, to our newest graphic addition, our friend Max von Mullen, for bringing up our fixtures for this upcoming weekend, and a massive game in the context of that bottom playoff bits and pieces there. The Bees and the Sharks go head to head this coming Saturday. A bit of a tougher task for the Bristol Pitbulls as they take on the MK Lightning. Will we have happy Lightning or sad Lightning? Will the Lightning be in good form and good mood and give Bristol a kicking, or will Bristol have to deal with the wrath of very cross Lightning? Either way, Yorkshire Derby up at the world's most versatile arena. Hull take on Sheffield. Swindon versus Leeds. The Nel Classico comes to the Link Centre this coming Saturday evening, and then we have Telford taking on Peterborough on Saturday night as well. Into Sunday then, and a game I'm actually quite interested to see, and it's one of those games I'd love to be able to watch live with my own eyes rather than through a stream. Leeds take on Telford, MK take on Swindon. We'll see how that goes, given everything that's about to happen on Thursday. Sleeper game for what could be game of the weekend, potentially. Peterborough versus the Bees. Peterborough kind of needing to get some form back. The Bees looking to press on and keep themselves very much in the playoff hunt. The Raiders host the Seahawks down at Sapphire Ice and Leisure. And then it's the Puppy Bowl. It's Sheffield versus Bristol at Ice Sheffield on Sunday afternoon. That, of course, then means that we can have a quick look at the National Division table. And as is to be expected, Leeds are still top by quite some distance, all things considered. Yes, the gap has been reduced to only 3 points, but the Knights, with 3 games in hand over MK, the ball still very much in the court of Ryan Aldridge's side. And as you can see there, the maximum point totals possible in that right-hand column there. Leeds, a 99-point season still possible. The maximum that MK can get to is 90. Swindon in third place then, 54 points from their 37 games played, so they have a game in hand on MK. If the Lightning slip up and the Cats keep pressing on with this relatively decent form, could we have 2 Steve Nell's own sides at the top of the table? The gap then does start to open up. Hull in fourth place, 47 from 36. Peterborough, 43 from 38, Telford 40 from 38, Solway 34 from 39, and the Bees with 32 from 38. So still a game in hand over for Don Gilbey over Martin Grubb's side. But that is the playoff situation at the moment. But the Raiders are still lurking around. 37 games played for the Raiders, so 2 games in hand and 4 points behind Solway. The Raiders are not dead in this playoff race yet. The Sheffield Steel Dogs 25 from 38. With some relatively better performances recently than we had for a couple of weeks before then. And Bristol, unfortunately, as we are well aware, bottom of the table, 18 points from 38 games. Ever creeping ever closer to that mathematical removal from the playoff picture for the Pitbulls. Raiders versus Leeds Friday night as well, Anthony. Yeah, apologies. Max has only chucked me Saturday and Sunday's fixtures. This is what you get for using child labour. On that front. So apologies about this. Raiders versus Leeds on Friday evening as well, as that's going to be the big issue for Leeds going forward. Just the sheer volume of games they need to make up. And that is where Milton Keynes will be hoping that if they can keep this thing ticking on, because like I said, the 4-point weekend for the Lightning, nothing to be sniffed at, poking away still. And all that MK can do is win the games that they play. They can't do anything else. They can't expect Leeds to lose. All they can do is win. It's in Leeds' court, but all Milton Keynes can do is keep the pressure on. Looking at the chat, what have we got in the chat? MK have scored 8 at home in 3 straight weeks. Richard Robinson, I do think Swindon have the pace to do it. I think that's also one of the other things as well, is that in the past, MK have been a much faster side than a lot of teams they've played. Swindon can match them for pace. This is all about game plan, I think, this one. That was also something that helped Hull, was an early goal at Leeds at 1:17. Yeah, making the better team overthink their plan. Can we discuss Rory Herman's second Michigan goal of the season on Saturday evening? Yeah, I think he's really fortunate he didn't do that against Callum Hepburn. Callum Hepburn has always told me if anybody tries to do a Michigan on him, he'll break their wrists. So we'll see what happens there. Raiders battled hard and kept it close in Leeds until the second half of the third period, but 2-1 down at the time, had to push forward and got caught by Leeds' speed and firepower. That's why Leeds are so good. The OT win against the Raiders is a game last season's Wildcats would have lost for sure, but give credit to the Raiders. They came in with a game plan to frustrate us for large parts, and it worked. Yep. Raiders versus Leeds. Yes, Raiders versus Leeds. Yep. So this is replacing the Pride game that got missed due to the Zamboni issues. It's good to see that the Raiders are going to make sure that those jerseys do get used into the bargain as well. That is what we like to see. The one thing I don't have a graphic for, but we will talk about very, very briefly, just because we can, of course, pull up the... we can quickly pull up what we know, which because, of course, if you haven't, of course, the bits that Max has done for us, of course, the National Division fixtures done by Max Van Mullen. He's a new youngster, of course, a passion for graphic design, asked to help out and could. All the other bits and pieces, of course, are from the fantastic Joe Scutts at NIHL Stats, nhlstats.wordpress.com. Joe is the official EIH statistician, meaning if it's on Joe's website, it is legit. It is the stuff that you want to be checking out because it is all official. It would also be much better if everybody handed in their bits and pieces on time. But what we do know, of course, now, and the latest feature you can check out on Joe's website is he's got all the playoff bits and pieces. So if the playoffs started today, we would know what would happen. So just a quick look, and let's see what people think of these playoff groups. If the playoffs in the National Division started tonight, we would have 2 groups of 4. We would see Leeds in first place, the 4th seed, the Hull Seahawks, the 5th seed, Peterborough Phantoms, and the 8th seed, Bees, in one group. So Leeds, Hull, Peterborough, and the Bees in one group, and Milton Keynes as the 2nd seed, Swindon as the 3rd seed, Telford as the 6th seed, and Solway as the 7th seed if in Group B, if the playoffs started tonight. So the Knights, the Seahawks, the Phantoms and the Bees in one side, the Lightning, the Wildcats, the Tigers and the Sharks in the other side. Who do we think would make it through there? Because for me, Group B would kind of lean itself towards being the easier of those two groups to kind of pull out. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Solway. I would love Solway to make it back to Coventry. But that Group B, if it ended up as MK, Swindon, Telford and Solway, that I can only really see MK and Swindon pulling out of that group. Group A, for me, is a little bit more open. Mostly just because two of three between Leeds, Hull and Peterborough. That means one of those three sides would probably, most likely, not make it. And the Bees have managed to get a few bits and pieces. They've given some teams a bloody nose. And given the weirdness of the playoffs, Group A, if that was how it stretched out, looks like it could be really, really open. I have to confess I'm not 100% certain that certainly 6, 7 and 8, I'm not 100% certain stay that way. Telford in 6th, that's probably more likely than anything else, but I'm not convinced that potentially we don't see a swapping of the Bees and the Sharks in that one. Because if I'm Solway, I want to be away from Milton Keynes, who put a lot of goals on us, and Swindon, who've put a lot of goals on us this season. Solway almost would have a better chance in Group A. They'd almost have a better chance finishing 8th and getting Peterborough, Hull and Leeds than if they stay in 7th place and get the group they're in. And with all due respect to Solway, I don't think they're going to get 5th. So they'd almost be in their interest to drop down a space and get a potentially better draw out of the playoffs. But what do you think? If those are the playoff groups, questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, stick them in the chat. Let's see what we think. Let's see what we think on that one. Leeds games in hand over MK. Raiders away on Friday. Hull home on Thursday the 22nd of February. And Swindon away on Friday the 8th of March. So like we chatted about this before, Jamie. Not easy, but all incredibly doable for them. I think is the issue there. Because Leeds are relentless on that front. What we will do, he says, quickly lining up his bits and pieces, getting his ducks back in a row. We'll just hit the button there, and then we'll hit the button there, because what we'll do is we'll quickly move on and have a look at North 1 from the weekend. Now, of course, we did see the announcement from EIH that Deeside, their failure to travel to Blackburn meant they'd forfeited their game in the M56 Cup. Given the potential legal ramifications on that one, we'll leave that one alone. But the win this while with a decent win in that M56 Cup, beating Deeside by 4-1 on Saturday evening there. Obviously, that's a sort of an extra competition to help pad out the fixtures a little bit, much like Blackburn joining the Northern League. Blackburn will be playing Kirkcaldy this coming Saturday. In the actual league itself, the Hawks have been on a pretty decent run of things. Of course, into the cup final, they'll be the first ones to make an attempt to dent Billingham's attempt at a Grand Slam. An 8-3 win in Hull. Not many teams win in Hull. Whitley, of course, lost in Hull. Billingham lost in Hull to the Jets, but the Hawks cruise over the Jets with that 8-3 win there. The battle of the ones that fly, as it were. It was a big home and home weekend at the bottom of North 1 between the Sheffield Scimitars and the Nottingham Lions, and the Lions skate out of Ice Sheffield with a 6-2 victory, a massive win for Matt Bradbury's side there. Goals, of course, many of the goals, of course, coming from everybody's favourite Zach Yokoyama. Sunday then. Well, it was a bump back down to earth for Widnes. Of course, a win in the cup, but then back into league play. Billingham show no mercy. 7-0 the Stars winning in that one to keep their place at the top of the league. But Blackburn are not going away quietly. They win the second part of their home and home in Lancashire with a 6-2 victory over Hull. Although, as we know, for whatever reason, Hull just don't seem to do very well on the road. It was live on YouTube as well for free on Sunday evening, but another big win for the Nottingham Lions that leapfrogs them above the Scimitars. A 4-2 victory for the Lions on Sunday evening. A hat-trick from Zach Yokoyama to do the business there. And the other team that's been trying to keep pace with Billingham, the Solihull Barons, their one-game weekend, they condemned Deeside to a weekend without any success whatsoever. A 6-3 win for the Barons at Hobbs-Moat Road. So then it's a very light weekend actually in fixtures in North 1, all things considered. But the Scimitars back at home. They are the only Saturday game in the entire division. A 4:40pm face-off at Ice Sheffield for the Shims. They take on the Whitley Warriors. Of course, great news out of Whitley that Sir Tony Hand, as we like to call him, or Tony Hand as his actual name is, his medical procedure has gone well. He's going to be back home recovering. We send him all our best, of course. Will Whitley be able to put a smile on his face by winning at Ice Sheffield this coming Saturday? And then much more going on Sunday. Deeside and Billingham meet in North Wales. That's a 5:15pm face-off over in North Wales. For two 5:30pm face-offs then in the league, Solihull take on Whitley. No home games for the Warriors this weekend as they've got deals to do in the Midlands. And then Widnes take on Sheffield. A big game there again in the hunt for that last playoff spot. Widnes will be looking to secure their position inside the top 8. And then 7:20, it'll be live again on YouTube for free. The Nottingham Lions taking on the Blackburn Hawks. These two sides do not like each other. So if you like your hockey with a little bit of an edge, a little bit of feistiness, I would sincerely recommend that you check out the Nottingham Lions YouTube page this coming Sunday evening at 7:20. But then, of course, we'll have a quick look at the league. We know that Billingham and Blackburn will meet in the Northern Cup. But you can see the league table at the moment, though. Billingham in control. 6 points clear at the top with a game in hand. 42 from 24 over Solihull. Followed by Blackburn, who are hanging around there or thereabouts, although Solihull very much in command of second spot. Deeside, Whitley, Hull, and Widnes is what takes us down to 7th place. And their 4-point weekend, the Lions' first 4-point weekend in the better part of 2 years, 18 months to 2 years, sees the Lions take that last playoff spot for the moment. We can also see that we've got a lot of teams qualified for the playoffs in North 1. First down to 6. At the moment, it is literally a 3-horse race to make the playoffs. If it started today, where you drop the Scimitars out, we'd see 4 quarterfinals over 2 legs. Billingham would play Nottingham, Solihull would play Widnes, Blackburn would play Hull. Very interested to see how that series went. And Deeside versus Whitley would be the 4 quarterfinals heading towards the Northern playoff weekend. And then there's the South. And yes, we'll talk about him now very quickly, which is the news that Oxford City Stars have released import defenceman Australian Darcy Flanagan because he apparently went AWOL, was the news out of the City Stars. We will just very quickly pull up the press release from the City Stars. He says, quickly tapping bits and pieces on his phone. Because of course the City Stars did put out this press release. There we are. Regrettably, we must announce the termination of Darcy Flanagan's contract with the Oxford City Stars effective immediately. Despite the club's unwavering commitment to fostering a culture of determination and dedication, Flanagan has chosen to go AWOL. Such actions are incompatible with the standards of professionalism and commitment we uphold at Oxford. We wish Darcy the best in his future endeavours, but the club remains steadfast in prioritising players who share our ethos of dedication and team spirit. Not ideal, and of course I did see he was lurking in the chat, which of course is Ben from Zero Pucks Given. I know he's spoken to Darcy relatively recently, saying that playing here has made him fall out of love with the game, which is a shame to hear. It certainly is, but you can do things the right way, I think is probably the way I would describe it. Certainly, the big issue from my understanding being that he wished to go do something else this weekend. Was told he needed to play, has chosen not to play, and that is what has kind of forced the issue here. Flanagan, of course, has had a massively tough year with Oxford this year. Suspended towards the beginning of the campaign for a check to the head on Joe Llewellyn, where he didn't check him anywhere near his head. Oxford, of course, have had a really tough year in terms of results, in terms of team cohesion. Flanagan's had his D partner changed relatively regularly, even to the point where I was obviously at the MK game where he got hit in the face, no call on the play, had to stand up for himself and fought Mark Austin. It was pretty much of a sort of a non-entity of a fight, but because he got fired for fighting, he picked up another penalty point, he got suspended for another 2 games on top of that. I don't blame him for having a tough year. But if you're going to commit to playing hockey for a team, whatever the level, unless you've agreed, you don't go wandering off. It's as simple as that. And I'm sure in Darcy's mind there's a lot of really good reasons why he's done that, and I'm sure he probably feels quite justified in his approach to that. That's okay, and that's his prerogative. He's got to make a decision for himself, and maybe for whatever reason, being in Oxford right now, playing hockey in Oxford right now, isn't the thing he needs to do. But, and I say this as somebody who's had a fair bit of interaction with the management of the City Stars this year, they're there to talk to. You don't just walk off. There's a multitude of things here. Could he maybe have had a conversation with Oxford and say, look, I just need a couple of weeks to go away and get my head straight? Knowing Shane Moore, I'm sure there's a conversation piece that could have been had. It's not like Oxford are not prepared to give people some latitude. They've loaned Petr Cech to Belfast again. And they obviously have tried a lot this year. When things haven't gone right, they've tried to bring different guys in. We've seen guys leave, like Josh Abbott, who's gone back to Guildford. Bailey Pitchers now in Cardiff in Division 2. They've brought different guys in. Oxford have tried to do a lot this year. Maybe they tried to do too much is potentially the thing, especially where the on-ice product has not been at the level where people will have wanted it. And what made it worse? Flanagan suspended for 2 games, and it was a home series for them. 1 league game, 1 cup game against Invicta, and a very short bench City Stars. They turned up in Invicta with 7 forwards on Saturday evening and Petr Cech in goal, but Petr Cech does not work miracles. A 5-0 win for Invicta and a shutout for Owen Ryder in league play. Slough, of course, desperately trying to keep pace with Streatham, but a hard-fought and well-won 4-2 victory over the Romford Buccaneers. Brindley Caps, of course, still turning heads across the NIHL, but so are the Holy Trinity in Slough as they look to press on. It's not going to be smooth sailing for Streatham if they want to win all the trophies this year. And then the other game on Saturday was the one I was at. Solent versus Streatham, a 4-2 win for the Redhawks. The late winners coming here. Devils 2-1 down going into the third period. Alex Murray tying the game up with about 10 minutes to go. And then a late winner from Ben Ely Newman, forcing a mistake off the defence, skating in, slotting the puck under Aaron Taylor for 3-2. Ben Painter with the empty net goal at the death to finalise that result. Very nervous, very tense, very bitty game of hockey in places, but massively entertaining. A sellout as well in Gosport. Yes, it is one of the smallest rinks in the country, but that did not detract from the fact that the atmosphere at this game was electric. As I've said, whether it's on the high road or whether it's in Gosport, if you get the opportunity to see a game between these two sides, this is a thing to see. The one thing as well that I think, and I was having a conversation with Thomas Graham about this earlier today, when you think about it as well from Division 1, that National Division 1 title game Sunday afternoon in Coventry at the Final Four weekend, we're staring down the barrel pretty much of Billingham versus Streatham. And the one thing I wondered as to whether there was a bigger issue for Streatham was they came in the last couple of years not particularly battle tested in some points. And the one thing that Streatham have had this year, they've been tested, and they've been tested much more strongly than they have the last couple of years. Games like this, where they get dragged into the trenches, had to play a bit of Solent's game to get past them, but did get past them. This bodes well for Streatham come that one-off game against a side that they have never played before. This could be really big for them as a result. Sunday then, the Devils got themselves back to winning ways and making a massive dent in the title chances of the Chelmsford Chieftains. A 5-3 win for Alex Murray's side at the Riverside. Britain Cup action then at the Ox Pens, and a much better performance from the Oxford City Stars. They actually managed to put 4 goals on the board for the first time in a number of weeks, but they still end up losing by 6-4. Fortunately for them, only in cup play. And then Streatham gave MK an absolute kicking to the point that Chris Beale, bless his heart, who does the Twitter updates for the Red Hawks, lost count. 14-1. And the discussion again about the MK Thunder's place in Division 1 will rumble on and rumble on and rumble on. Well, that means though in terms of fixtures, we've got a pretty busy weekend, a fair few games in that additional Britain Cup this coming weekend. Saturday then, a pretty full docket's worth of games. Chelmsford versus Invicta is a cup-only game, 5:30 p.m. in the Britain Cup for those two at the Riverside. League action then is the rest of the way on Saturday, 5:30 on the High Road for Streatham versus Slough. That has massive title-deciding implications on the High Road there. Romford take on the Solent Devils at Sapphire. That's at 5:15, and a 7 p.m. face-off at the Thunderdome for MK versus Oxford. MK, of course, I was there a couple of weeks ago. The write-up's there at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com from MK's first win in 15 games when they beat when they beat Oxford at the Oxpeds. Will the City Stars get a measure of revenge in MK this coming Saturday? 3 games then on Sunday. 2 of them are in the Britain Cup. Invicta take on Streatham at 5:45 in Gillingham. Oxford take on Chelmsford at 6:15 at the Oxpens. The one lone league game is a return fixture from this past weekend. Slough take on Romford at the Hangar. So have a quick look as well then at the South 1 table, and as you can see, massive advantage to Streatham. 2 points ahead of Slough, 4 games in hand on the Jets, 6 points ahead of Chelmsford with 2 games in hand on the Chieftains. They've only lost 3 games all season. Ben Painter's side are firmly in control when it comes to things in South 1. Solent there, as you can see, in 4th and tied on points with Invicta, but the Devils hold the tiebreaker and have a game in hand. Romford, who are in 6th place, and I don't think many of us predicted that, but a 16-point season from them is pretty decent, all things considered. Oxford's wretched year continues. They've actually lost more games of regulation, and MK. Well, MK have got 5 games in hand. The problem being is they somehow would have to find 4 points, or at least 6 points, out of those 5 games. The games in hand are going to be purely above teams, well above them. You'd venture Streatham have got to play them a couple of times, and Solent will have to play them a couple of times as well. Doesn't bode well for MK if they want to avoid the wooden spoon. We dash then to North 2, heading up north. A pretty full docket of games on Saturday in North 2, and the machine that is the Telford Tigers 2 keeps rattling along. Made it into the cup final to take on Sutton, and a 5-1 win for the Tigers away at the Forum in Billingham. Coventry, well, they were obviously knocked out in the cup semi-finals by Sutton. A disappointing result for them the weekend previous, but a 9-0 win over Nottingham to put some smiles on faces. But certainly at least one Coventry side beat another Nottingham side this past weekend. Kingston, Andrew Day was in the building for this one, for that 12:30pm face-off on Saturday, and 5-4 Altrincham Aces win at the world's most versatile arena on Saturday. A good win for the Aces as they look to start rounding out their season with some decent forms. As Andrew said, their decent game in Hull on Saturday. Kingston found 5-2 at 29:19. Sharks did a timeout and changed netminder. Got back to 5-4 by the end of the second, but couldn't get a goal in the third. Thank you for that, Andrew. Always good to see. And then the other game on Saturday, a 6-3 win for the Sheffield Titans over the Bradford Bulldogs, as the Titans look to keep pace on the playoff spots as well. Sunday then, well, it was a 3-point weekend in the end for the Aces. They lose in the shootout to the Billingham Buccaneers. A very decent season for the Buccaneers, this one. Sometimes new teams, and of course we've seen Kingston fluctuated in their results, especially at the beginning of the year. But Altrincham have proven that they have Billingham have proven they can really step up and play in this division. Bradford then just gave Nottingham an absolute pumping on Sunday. 13-2 is not something that anybody would like to be on the end of. But then, in terms of who emerges as the proper contender to Telford, who will reign in the Tigers? A 4-0 shutout win is a massive statement by the Sutton Sting over the Coventry Blaze. It looks like Sutton are going to prove to be the ones who are going to cause the massive issue. But it does mean the Sting need to do what they've not done this year, and Coventry have. They have to beat Telford, and they will need to do so if they want to win the North 2 Cup. This upcoming weekend, then, plenty of action in North 2. No confirmed face-off time. That was usually around sort of the 5:30 mark on Saturday for the Altrincham Aces and the Bradford Bulldogs. And then 2 other games on Saturday. Coventry welcome the Kingston Sharks to the Sky Dome on Saturday evening at 7pm, and Sheffield take on Telford at 7:40. Potential banana skin game here for Telford. That Titans side, their form has fluctuated a fair bit throughout this season, but they've proven to have a little bit of quality. Can they spring the big surprise and open the door for Sutton to sneak in and cause some mayhem? Sunday then, the Billingham Buccaneers and Altrincham Aces will do battle again, having faced each other this past weekend. Kingston take on Nottingham, which is a great opportunity for the Sharks to get some more points on the board. Sutton with their local derby against the Sheffield Titans on Sunday. That's a 1pm face-off at Ice Sheffield. And then 6 o'clock on a Sunday in Telford, there's hockey somewhere. A big game at the top end of North 2. The Telford Tigers and the Coventry NIHL Blaze. Which then means we have a quick look at the North 2 table, and it is still very much advantage Telford. 44 points from 23 games, 3 points up on Sutton with a game in hand. given the fact that the Tigers have only lost one game all season, that was of course away in the Skydome against the Blaze, undefeated at home this year. Although Sutton keeping pace in terms of results and goals, if Telford slip up, Sutton will be right on their tail. Coventry then a fair bit back, 6 points back on the Sting at the moment in third place. Billingham in fourth, tied on points with the Sheffield Titans. The Titans do have a game in hand, but the Buccaneers have the tiebreaker secured. And of course, those top 5 teams already qualify for the post-season, as we expect quarter-finals this year in North 2, which we didn't get before. Altrincham in 6th, Bradford 7th, Kingston in 8th. The Nottingham Lions, well, they are yet to win at home, the Lions. They've only got 1 point at home all season. That overtime loss earlier in the year. It's going to take something of a mammoth effort to the Lions make the post-season. Otherwise, we'll be seeing the Kingston Sharks and the Billingham Buccaneers, both new teams into North 2, making the post-season at the first attempt. What's that from Ben from Zero Pucks Given? Solent were terrific. Sunday night, Chelmsford didn't turn up. It doesn't take away how good Solent were. Solent are a good team. And of course, everyone talks about the small rink in Gosport, but Solent have to play half the games on the road, so... And also, they'll be quite frustrated. They came so close against Streatham and just couldn't quite get it over the line. 5 games in hand, there is a real possibility MK could leapfrog Oxford. MK can mathematically do it. I am not convinced they will, if I'm 100% honest. It would take a big effort. And if MK do it, fair play to them, I do not believe that they will, if I'm 100% honest. I think there is a real conversation to be had, again, about how competitive MK are in the league, because Oxford having one bad year is an anomaly. MK's is a trend. Yeah, big game this Saturday between. Yeah, like I said, Andrew, that game on Saturday at the Thunderdome between MK and Oxford is huge in the context of what happens with the Wooden Spoon in South 1. And then South 2, as we said, all the ridiculousness about the cup that we talked about at the top of the show, but there were games on Saturday as well, and a fair few of the big players involved in it. 6s across the board. Basingstoke beating Chelmsford by 6-1, and a debut in Basingstoke Buffalo colours for Adam Jones, the former Elite League defenceman, former Basingstoke Bison alternate captain and assistant coach. After timeout for medical issues, back on the ice. He returns to the ice with the Buffalo. Jones is going to be playing every game from now to the end of the season. The plan is for Jones to play out the season with the Buffalo and head into the playoffs with Basingstoke. He immediately becomes the best player in the division by quite some distance, and that is a huge, huge boom, not just for the Buffalo as a team, but some of those younger defencemen as well, guys like Freddie Stevens, who will be able to learn from such a high-quality player. Haringey, well, they avenged their defeat earlier in the season down in Gosport that I was at, as they win by 6-0 at Ali Pally against the Solent Junior Devils. And the Peterborough Phantoms get their home win at the weekend, a 6-1 win over the Oxford Rising Stars. And then the game that should have been 2 things at once and only was 1, but Basingstoke make a point of putting the Peterborough Phantoms to the sword. A short-benched Phantoms turned up with 2 netminders, one of whom had to play as an outskater. A 5-1 win there for Basingstoke, meaning the results in other places has confirmed the Buffalo's place in the playoffs, having missed it last year under its old regime. Guildford, well, they did lose the previous weekend, their first loss of the season down in Cardiff, and they've taken it out on the Streatham Blackhawks. A 13-0 win for the Phoenix in that sort of south of the river derby. And then they've done it again. The Lee Valley Lions have won. They have won, not just have they won, they've won their 3rd game of the season, which is, I don't believe they've done for the better part of a couple of years. But a 5-3 win for the Lions at home against the Oxford Rising Stars. All things considered, a great season for Lee Valley now. To win 3 games in a year is more than they've won in the last 2 combined. Fixtures end up coming this weekend, and the Lions, well, they'll have a bit of a tougher test when they head to Basingstoke for the last home game of the Buffalo's campaign in the league at the moment. Obviously, the Buffalo are going to be in the playoffs, as we now know, but certainly I'm interested to see, especially given the frustrations given this cup debacle, how will Basingstoke take that out on the Lee Valley Lions. Elsewhere on Saturday, the Invicta Mustangs and the Solent Junior Devils will do battle. That's 5:45 down in Kent. And also on Saturday, the Oxford Rising Stars, where if they want to get back to winning ways, it's going to be a hell of a test as they take on the Peterborough the Peterborough Phantoms. 2 games then on Sunday. Bristol take on Chelmsford. That's quite a nice afternoon face-off there. 4:15 at Cribbs Causeway against the Chelmsford Warriors. And Streatham will look to try and, I say, avenge their defeat to Guildford. It's going to be a pretty big one if they manage to do it, but it's the Streatham Blackhawks and the Guildford Phoenix at 6:45 p.m. on the High Road this coming Sunday. If we look at the table then, 2 teams at the top still tied on 28 points, but the Phoenix with 2 games in hand over Haringey means that Stuart Potts' side is still in the driving seat. Peterborough in 3rd, Bristol in 4th, and Basingstoke in 5th. The top 5 all qualified now for the playoffs. Results in certain directions, of course, will mean that we'll start seeing more teams soon. Cardiff are in 6th, Invicta 7th, and Solent are up to 8th in the table at the moment, with a point and over, and a game in hand over the Rising Stars. 2 games in hand over Streatham as well, but level on games with Chelmsford, who are only 2 points behind. That race for that last spot is going to be very, very tight. Lee Valley are still bottom, but they're not mathematically out of the playoffs yet. They technically can still finish level on points with the Streatham Blackhawks at 18, as we can see there. Pretty crazy stuff, all things considered, that this division, like I say, has a very, very wide gulf from top to bottom. And the team that has been the worst team in the NIHL for the better part of the last couple of years have managed to get wins and are still mathematically in it in February. That's pretty decent, all things considered. Oh, no, wrong one. Wrong button. There we go. Back from whence we came. Either way, that's it. The entirety of the National Ice Hockey League structure, all 5 divisions. We've looked at every fixture, every result. And that means, of course, that we get towards the back end of our show. The door is open. Free reign, ladies and gentlemen. Questions, comments, thoughts and feelings. Anything you want to chuck in the chat. Let's have a chat about bits and pieces as we go. Lots, of course, like I say, to talk about. I'm taking it away from Peterborough in the first leg game, but do you think this is a background political decision made with PI to take away from the disastrous handling of Basingstoke and not wanting attention drawn to it? No, this is nonsense, I think, is what this is, Richard. I don't think Planet Ice are that interested in mucking around with South 2, if I'm 100% honest to you. When you think of... I've watched hockey in Basingstoke since 2005, and you think that the ice has never been an issue to get a game cancelled. A hole in the roof was never an issue to get a game cancelled. Games have been cancelled when I'm in Basingstoke, effectively, for 3 reasons. COVID killed an entire season and a bit. The Bison being sick killed off a game. And the only other thing that happened was a cold snap back in the early 2010s meant the roads around the leisure park were so bad that cars couldn't get there. So an ice hockey game got cancelled because of ice outside of the building. So for the fact that a game got called off because the toilets broke is what it is. Like it's so outside of the bits and pieces that you don't really... I can't think of what to, like I say, it's for all of the gubbins with Planet Ice. This just isn't in there. They wouldn't be bothered. This is below their sphere of care, I think, on that particular front. Certainly, I made a point of, like I say, I've also tweeted out before the show started about that video from the council meeting in Basingstoke last night. So do go and check that out. I have just seen something from Councillor Alex Lee from Basingstoke Council, because I quoted it as, the ice rink has been at the heart of my growing up in Basingstoke. Losing it would be an absolute travesty. Keep an eye out for the next full council meeting as I put a motion through on it. The thing I would say to Councillor Lee is that I'm fed up of motions. I want something to actually happen, please. And I realise the mechanisms and the machinery of democracy have something to go through. But when when one of the council members in this thing sort of said, well, we can't list the ice rink as core services because there's already an ice rink there, and I'm sorry to go to say it, it's absolute rot. The meeting and the discussion that was had there made it very, very patently clear that a lot of people they don't just consider the ice rink a service. They consider it a core service for Basingstoke for the good that it brings to the town, to the local region, and to the lives of people that use it. The notion that it is not a core service now in Basingstoke is so fanciful as to be downright insulting to suggest otherwise. Sorry, I meant not taking it away from Peterborough, as they were clearly better in the first leg. I mean, it is what it is on that front. I mean, Peterborough is a Planet Ice rink as well that clearly needs some attention paid to it. But yeah, I just don't think it's in their sphere of care or influence. But yeah, anything else anybody else wants to chat about? Of course, leagues across the country, leagues across the continent, slowly edging their way towards the playoffs. Should be some fascinating stuff. Certainly, I of course will be keeping my eye on all of our Germanic leagues. Video reviews with DOPS seems only seen them last week. Did clubs only just find the button to press? Presumably, this was a thing all season, but not used for some reason. So, with video evidence submitted to DOPS, the clubs have to record their games. That is in the rules of competition. They must do it. The thing with DOPS and DOPS publishing the videos is different, because that is somebody needing to go into the system, pull out the video, clip the video, put the video into a format that they can use, and then potentially, as they were earlier in the season, giving it to Craig Simpson to do a voiceover of. And Craig is off with GB doing bits and pieces this weekend, so we couldn't do it this weekend. But the complete inconsistency and the way it's been handled has just been really, really poor. Especially because there is video. There is always video. And if a team's not providing video, they can be fined. And if they keep not providing video, they can have points deducted. So the fact that England Ice Hockey won't do anything about it properly is really silly. Now, I'm aware of a review that's been put in from last week. And you can ask for the review. That team has burned that review, in my opinion, because the thing that they said happened 100% hasn't happened. But we'll see what happens on it on that front. I found it really interesting as well, and I mentioned them earlier in the show, but Jack from Macca Talk Hockey said, I will do the video announcements for you. This is a lad who makes video content for Swindon. He's working for Cheltenham Town Football Club. His life is creating social media content. Said it out loud, very loudly for everybody to hear. And they clearly haven't gone anywhere near him. Why? If there's people screaming out to help, what way do they need to scream out for help to provide it to you when people are wanting to do it? That's what I don't get. I mean, regarding penalties that were not called on the night. And again, all the more reason to do it, because that incident will be in Instat. It will be uploaded to Pixelot for people to pull down and look at. If they're going to give supplementary discipline, why have they given? Why was it asked to be reviewed? What was the reasoning behind it? Show the video, and then announce why it's supplementary discipline, and then announce the penalty for it. Transparency. It is not hard. It is not difficult unless you make it difficult for yourself. Even if it's just written down. Club A asked for a review of an incident that happened in the game between this team and this team. Upon further review of the video by the disciplinary committee, it was determined that this action took place. This action is a penalty under this rule, and therefore, following that, they've been assessed the following sanction. They are able to return at this point. There's your text template, England Ice Hockey. Knock yourselves out, because Lord knows that enough people have been chucking out free ideas for you to use, because that's the stupid thing. I don't sit here criticising because it's easy. I criticise because I want the sport to do well. Because like I said, I love this stupid game for my sins. And when I see stuff that is bad, I will say that it is bad. Whether it's a guy not getting paid, whether it's a decision by a player or a decision by an official. And then if something is good, I'll tell you it's good. Because that is the flip side of that. It is good to provide constructive criticism and how things can be better. And you've got to praise the things that are good as well. This link up with the University of Essex in terms of helping develop better coaching pathways is great. This will demonstratively, having peer-reviewed academic work happening about this, will make stuff better. But it doesn't help if you do the basic things really, really badly. Top of the table game in WNIHL Elite at Solihull. Vixens 4, Queen Bees 7 on Saturday. But then Sunday, the Queen Bees lost at home to the Kingston Diamonds, and Solihull won 7-1 against Whitley Bay, at Whitley Bay against the Beacons. I need to find a women's game that I can get to, but I really do want to go. Worst case scenario, I'm going to try and go down and watch the Solent Amazons. Go see my friend Hannah Driver. I need to actually see, because obviously I interviewed Hannah and Noni Dodswell from Ice Crushers GBR. Noni plays for coaches Oxford, and Hannah obviously plays for Solent. If I could see those two play each other, that'd be a lot of fun. I'm just hoping it's not like 9 o'clock at night and it's on a Sunday or something stupid. Both the bands called in the Leeds MK game on the Friday the 26th were not called on the night. MK fans can't remember when the Venus High Stick took place. Clearly got reviewed though, so you can't really do much on that one. Same thing with the Witkowski penalty. I think the bigger issue from that game was, like I say, MK didn't do enough to trouble Leeds for 60 minutes. There's your bigger problem, in my opinion. I still don't maintain that game was anywhere near as close as people seem to think it was. And of course, passed by the NHL All-Star game, so that has that's kept people laughing bits and pieces for that. Mascot dodgeball, always tons of fun. Apologies, Andrew. You did stick that in the chat. The Flames 4-2 up at the end of the second in the game against Braehead. We'll quickly do. Let's just quickly do that. Does VAR run dops? It feels like it sometimes, but no. Fortunately, the thing that confuses me massively about VAR sort of in football was because actually all they had to do was look at how other sports do it and just copy, and they didn't. The third period is underway. They are ticking along. Just having a look at some bits and pieces. Obviously, Zach Milton is in the lineup for Guildford tonight and has played the sum total of no shifts. All right. Whereas every player for the Clan has touched the ice at least once, albeit Craig Peacock has played 4 minutes and 41 seconds for so far in total for the Clan tonight, guesting for them. NHL finally allowing players to play in the Olympics. Hallelujah. I think it's a good thing ultimately. I think getting the best players on. It means when GB qualify for 2026, we can get battered by the best in the world, just like at Worlds. But yeah, ultimately it's a good thing. It gets great eyes on it. Fascinated to see what they do with Russia, particularly for 2026. I venture it will be Russian athletes again, as it were. But yeah, that is a thing. That is definitely going to be an interesting thing that's happening. Of course, the 2018 games where we didn't have NHLers, I thought were actually really entertaining. It should be said. What will be really interesting to see is a first women's ice hockey Olympic tournament post the introduction of the PWHL. That's going to be really, really interesting. Particularly, of course, because the PWHL, if you haven't watched it on YouTube, where have you been hiding? They're like Sunday evenings if you're at home. They've got games on YouTube that you can watch for free, but the physicality level in the PWHL, which is something the women had asked for it to be much more physical, was that's not going to fly in Olympic play. So that'll be really interesting to see. Canada, yes. I mean, both Canadian teams are going to be mad. Shout out Hockey Canada and shout out the London, Ontario Police Department for taking 6 years to prosecute people. Well done, dummies. But yes, Canada is cold. I've been to Canada in February. It was cold. PWHL is solid hockey, lots of talent on show. It really is. I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed watching the games, it should be said, when I get the opportunity to do so. I'm getting a message from somebody. Interesting. Yeah, that'd be Interesting, yes. Just had somebody from Blind Ice Hockey UK. Apparently they're doing a tester station in Romford in the not too distant future. I will get back to that person momentarily. Last call, because we're at 20 past 9. We're starting to roll on. Where are you this weekend? I haven't made my mind up. Lots of people suggesting like really silly places. Somebody suggested I should go to Aberdeen. Not 100% certain. I might go to Swindon. I might go to Basingstoke and watch the game against the Lions. But I am tempted to go to Swindon just because I want the opportunity to see Leeds with my own eyes again. I haven't seen them properly. I haven't seen them since the beginning of the season. I want to see them now, post some of their changes. So that'd be interesting. I mean, obviously Oxford, it always becomes an option, but I've seen Oxford play Chelmsford already this season, so I'm not sure whether I want to do that again. I mean, I'm almost tempted to go to MK and watch the MK Oxford game, but I haven't made my decision yet, Richard, it should be said. I'm still considering my options. Thoughts on the rule changes being talked about? 3 points, regulation win, 2 points OT win. Player doesn't come out of the penalty box after a power play goal. I'll take this briefly in 2 points. I've been a big, massive advocate for a very long period of time about about incentivising winning in regulation. It happens an awful lot on the continent. It's happened in Germany as long as I've watched ice hockey. So 3 points for a regulation win, 2 points for an OT win, 1 point for an OT loss, and none for a defeat in and none for a defeat in regulation. For me, is the preferred way that we should be doing things. Like I say, incentivise winning inside the 60 minutes. That's pretty standard in a lot of leagues around the world. The fact that the NHL don't do it, I don't know why. Player doesn't come out of the box after the power play goal. I mean, the CHL thing as well, where if you score short-handed, you nix the power play and your player comes back out anyway. I personally don't see the reason to fix something that isn't broken on that front. You've got the difference there as well between the minor penalty and the major penalty, where if you commit a major penalty and they score, the power play goes on. I don't see that. It feels like tinkering for the sake of tinkering. I do like the idea if you score short-handed, it ends the power play. I think that's, if you're looking for a way to tweak that, that's probably the place where you do it. But even then, I'm not sure you really need to. I think is probably what I'd say on that front. So yeah, that's the thing. The other thing as well is I'm tempted to find a National League game to go to. Just haven't been to a National League game there for a couple of weeks. So that's a decision there. But Bees versus Solway is doable. And like I say, Swindon versus Leeds. I mean, I commentated on Bees versus Solway earlier in the season. So going and seeing it again after some of those changes, how will Solway be now with Callie Robertson? So I've not seen with my own eyes since November, obviously. But there's options. I just need to actually just put on my big boy pants and make that choice about where I go. Like I say, very very interesting. Last call, definitely last call. And we'll head out of here before too long, because like I said, we started about 8 o'clock, it's now 20 past 9, we've all got lives to lead. But look how good the tech worked! And all it took was just like not trying to make my computer do too many things at once and make everything in sort of like picture format. But it worked. It has worked, it should say. So definitely pleased about that. But yeah, like I say, I can even see on my OBS, I've not dropped a single frame this evening. During the show, we've not had any. I don't think we've had any patchiness, so maybe this is the way to do it now. I've learned how to do it, found ways to not overtax the computer, as it were. So that appears to be the way to do it going forward, at least to keep the smoothness of the stream. Right then, folks, I think we will do it then. We will call it there. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things related to the NHL. Follow me on my hockey journey this season with our Banners on the Road series. As I taking a game, you get the in-depth insight into what I've seen. You, of course, have our Hockey Stories series, long-form pieces of content in written and audio-visual form from the 19th century to the present day, behind the Iron Curtain, into war and beyond. Players, coaches, officials, owners, the whole 9 yards that you can get to sink your teeth into there. You've also got the back catalogue of the old BOTW podcast and our free-to-download tabletop ice hockey game, Dice Hockey. You can download it from the website, play it with bits and pieces around your house, and it is for free. All I ask is that if you do download Dice Hockey and you enjoy it, please do stick a couple of quid towards Parkinson's UK. My dad has Parkinson's. That's crap. It'd be great to get some money towards research and a cure, but a monumental amount of stuff to go check out there at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Facebook.com/bannersonthewall. If you like the news and bits and pieces for your Facebook feed, that's the way to do it. Hit the like button over there and make sure that you follow along. Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at BannersOTW. That's the best place to keep up with me and my sort of general rolling commentary about hockey as we see it. And of course, you do occasionally get the odd little bit that doesn't make it onto the website over there as well. And then the other thing as well is our virtual busking hat over at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. BOTW is never going to head behind a paywall. That's just not the way I'm inclined. But if you do enjoy the bits and pieces, if you do enjoy the stuff that gets the content that I create, whether it's the writing, whether it's the interviews, whether it's the videos, whether it's what's current, if you want to just help keep the wheels turning and keep the lights on, you can do that over at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. But the great thing, of course, is we're here on YouTube. All of that information is down there in the description of the video, and I'll give you all of the usual YouTube spiel. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button, the notification bell, so that you get notified whenever a new video comes out or we head live here, and share the video out. Of course, I think it's better when you join live because you get to do all the fun things like join in the chat. But of course, you can catch up whenever you want on the YouTube channel, and you've got all of those fantastic videos that you can watch there as well. If you're looking for one and you want to start somewhere, I know obviously. John Strange, we interviewed one of the first folk to interview John Strange when Solway joined the national division. That's there. If you're looking for one, I interviewed Steve Dangle last summer. Go check out that interview if you've not checked out my interview with Steve Dangle Glim, of course, well-known hockey content creator and journalist and all that kind of thing. But there's a ton of stuff here on the BOTW YouTube channel, and of course the first and the best and the only live show to cover all 5 divisions of the NIHL structure. Here, Wednesday nights, the BOTW What's Current stream. Well, all done for another week. Fantastic to have it all be with you. Fantastic that everything worked for once and didn't fall over, which was really nice. Great to see that I've managed to. We've kind of come out the other side of those wobbles, and we've got some bits and pieces going. It should be said, I'm not going to do the trick that Ben does. I'm not telling you who my interview guest is, but I've got an interview guest coming soon. Definitely one I think that will be of interest to NIHL people. Long-standing player of great renown. When it's in the can, you'll hear it. Don't you worry about that. By the way, be happy. And if you can't be happy, then wherever you are, I beg, please, 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 please be safe. As my friend Scotty Wars would say, take care of yourself and somebody else. So bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, this is Anthony Russell saying stay safe. And so long till next time. Wherever you find your hockey this weekend, folks, may you enjoy it. And maybe I'll make up my mind at some point. See you along.